Last time on the Skip and Josh podcast.
Can you tell the listeners how you feel about Gary Bettman?
I can't stand him. Every time I see him, I want to punch him in the face, and I don't ever want to hear him open his mouth. He did that intermission interview with Ron McLean, which is a big waste of time because, first of all, Gary Bettman is not going to answer any question that he doesn't want to answer. So it doesn't really matter what Ron McLean asks him. Bettman's going to say whatever he wants anyway, so you might as well not have the interview.
You're listening to the Skip and Josh podcast with Skip Sherman and Josh Obadia.
Okay, Skip, so we're back to doing our favorite fill-in-the-blank episodes, and today we're going to do our favorite cities. But before we get to that, I know that we've spoken many times, but really every time we've spoken was about hockey. So there's a lot of baseball stuff that has happened in the last 2 months, and I just want to quickly mention a few things that have happened because I wrote them down and we never got a chance to talk about them.
There's a lot of going on in the world of sports, but it's all been on hold. Like, honestly, the last 2 months, and especially the last, month, has been a killer for me. With the Canadians and then the Euro. Like, after the Euro final on Sunday, which I don't want to talk about, actually, because it hurts too much, I didn't know what to do with myself, like, this week. I was like, okay, what am I doing at night tonight? There's no game on. Like, what's going on? I was all messed up, So.
Right. Yes, it has been a stressful time for you the past week for sure. So here's just a few things that have happened in baseball in the last, 2 months. If you recall, on our last favorite fill in the blank episode, we talked about there were so many no-hitters in baseball already, and it was only, I think a month or two into the season. And since then, there have been 3 more no-hitters. Spencer Turnbull pitched the 5th no-hitter of the season. Corey Kluber pitched the 6th no-hitter of the season. And then 2 or 3 Chicago Cubs pitchers combined to pitch the 7th no-hitter of the season. So there's even more. There are already 7. There might be an 8th that I'm forgetting.
There'll probably be 7 more by the time we get to the end of the year, no?
Probably.
Yeah.
Another thing that hasn't changed, there was a player hit a home run, and the very next day, that player was hit by a pitch by the pitcher.
Well, but doesn't that happen every game?
Yes,
doesn't happen?
It does.
This
That's
is
what I
nothing
say.
new,
It's
right?
another thing that hasn't changed. But the worst part about this is the player who got hit by the pitch, he's on the Chicago White Sox. I think his last name is Mercedes. His own manager didn't even defend him because his own manager thought that what he had done the day before was rude. But because
this is old. Yeah, this is old news. This is quite a while ago, but that just goes to show how long it's been since we talked about anything else other than the Canadians.
Exactly. The problem is, I haven't mentioned, his manager is Tony La Russa, who I can't stand, who's, you know how we talk about old school? He's like the poster boy for old school.
Well, he's beyond old school.
Right.
He's a dinosaur. That whole thing with La Russa, I actually had La Russa written in my notes at one point to talk about, and then I took it away because it's too old. but it was absolutely obscene how he didn't back up his player, and he's like, he's going to be apologizing, and I was like, he's apologizing? He's apologizing because he hit a home run on, and what was it? Because it was on a 3-0 count, or because the score
exactly.
was too...
Yes, it was a 3-0 pitch.
Like, when that whole thing happened, I was like, what is this? What is he supposed to do? What is every player supposed to do? As soon as the score is more than, like, as soon as you're winning by a lot, like, because they were winning by a big score, right? That's the deal, right?
Mm-hmm, I think so.
So what is he supposed to do? Before he goes up to bat, he should go and talk to his manager and say, Coach, am I allowed to hit a home run? Like, Skip, am I allowed to hit a home run today?
It's ridiculous. Like, he should be able to swing away. He should be able to hit a home run. That's the object of the game.
But there's a lot of players that came to his defense, other players.
Yes, I'm very happy to see that. Few other quick baseball notes. And you know how sometimes we have a segment, What Bugs Me? We should have another segment every episode because it seems like we can do one of these every episode. The stupidest baseball injury you've heard of.
There's more stupid than the ones you've already talked about over the years, about hurting your back because of a hotel bed or twisting your arm because you're carrying luggage, right? What's the new one?
So listen to these two more since we last spoke. And again, these are old. So I'm not sure how to pronounce this pitcher's name. He's a pitcher on Atlanta. I think it's Huskar Unoa. Anyway, I could be butchering his name, I apologize, but he broke his hand because one game he was so annoyed that he punched the dugout and he broke his hand.
Well, remember what's his name on the Expos did that?
Brian Barnes?
Brian Barnes. Yeah.
So that's a stupid injury. And then this one's even weirder. Zach Plesac on the Cleveland Indians, he fractured his thumb while taking off his shirt.
Oh, must have been on pretty tight, or maybe had some tricky buttons that he couldn't handle.
I don't know. Anyway, this only happens to baseball players.
Yeah. So speaking of baseball, and I don't want to derail you, did you watch any of the All-Star game or the Home Run Derby?
I'm glad you asked. I did, and I didn't like the uniforms that they used in the All-Star game because, as far as I'm concerned, every All-Star game I've ever watched, the players have worn their actual own uniform from their own team. So oh, this guy's on this team and this guy's on that team. And now this year, they were wearing these annoying uniforms that, I mean, I know it's all about money and Nike wants you to buy the uniforms, but it didn't look good at all.
Those uniforms on Twitter, on social media, those uniforms were universally hated. I don't think I saw anyone. Everybody, all the fans were so against those uniforms because they were so freaking ugly. Forget about that. They're not showing the team. They were just awful.
Yeah.
You know?
First of all, they only had most uniforms have buttons going all the way down. Here they only had buttons at the very top.
Yeah. No, it was just the colors were weird. Look, I guess they're trying to get more modern but they just weren't nice. They just were not nice.
Apparently they've sold out.
Well,
because we're old, right? Fans who are under 20 probably like this stuff.
Maybe selling when they say something is sold out, that doesn't mean anything.
I know.
Because what if they only
it just
produce
means
maybe they didn't make enough.
Yeah. Exactly.
But, so anyways, congratulations to Vlad Guerrero Jr., All-Star MVP.
That's right. And he almost took Max Scherzer's head off.
Yeah. I was surprised to find out he's the first Blue Jay to win the All-Star Game MVP. I just hadn't thought of it,
I was surprised to hear that as well.
Yeah. You'd figure that they would have had one along the line somewhere,
The best part of the game was there was a commercial with Vlad Jr. and Vlad Sr. I mean, they weren't talking or anything. It was just highlights of the two of them, and the screen was split in half, and they basically showed you how their swings are very similar, and both of them made the All-Star team in their third season in the majors, and you saw highlights of Vlad Guerrero Sr. hitting home runs at Olympic Stadium. So that was pretty cool for me. That was the best part of the game.
Good. So we're getting into no listener mail. Sorry, no listener mail this week, Josh. I got nothing for you.
That's okay.
We'll probably get back into having a listener mail segment as we get more into our sort of regularly scheduled type of programming, with the various topics. So when we did our last normal episode, when I say normal, I mean like you said, favorite fill in the blank. We decided it was my topic actually, right?
Yes, it was. It is.
Yeah. Our favorite cities, that we've been to. So the Skip and Josh podcast is going on the road virtually, and we're going to turn this into a bit of a travel show.
Great.
Because, borders are opening up. People want to get out. You want to know where you can go, where you should go. We're going to tell you our favorite cities that we've been to. And I mean, look, I travel a lot for work, so I'm really lucky in that respect. I've been to a lot of cities. I've been to seen a lot of cool places. So I'm ready to tell you my list. How hard was it for you to make this list? I imagine not very difficult.
It wasn't hard, but it took a while because what I did first was I tried to write down every city I've ever been to.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, I got to 20, 30 something. I don't remember. And I'm sure I left some out. And then I had to narrow it down to 7. That was the hard part.
Yeah. For me, the order was hard. And actually, I'm not even convinced my order is good. So I'm going to give you 7 in order, but I'm not. A lot of them are kind of interchangeable. So we'll see where we go.
Okay.
Number 7.
All right. Awesome. Favorite cities. Number 7. So staying in Canada for my number 7. And that is the beautiful city of Vancouver.
Very
which
nice.
I've been to several times, many times actually, but not in many years. I haven't been there in quite a long time. My thoughts about Vancouver are always, it's an awesome place to visit. Love going there. I don't think I could ever live there. But it's probably the most picturesque city you could ever imagine, in terms of the ocean and the mountains sort of colliding in the same space. That's what makes Vancouver so awesome. And it has this great like West Coast vibe about it, Us East Coasters, we have the East Coast bias, so whenever I could get out to Vancouver, it's just a different feeling, the people in the city. I love going there.
It's a great choice. It actually just missed making the cut for me. So before I tell you my first city, I could have easily had all of my cities be American cities, but I didn't want that to happen. So I made sure that I picked at least one Canadian city and also one European city.
Very nice.
But number 7 for me is actually Barcelona. Now, I was only there for 2.5 days, but it was a fun 2.5 days. I went there by myself and actually bumped into people. I didn't know them, but I got to know them. And I hung out with them for a few hours. And the funny part was we ended up at a police station because the camera they had ended up getting stolen. You know how they tell you when you go to Europe, you literally can't put anything down for half a second, your bag, your camera, your wallet, whatever, because it'll be gone. Sure enough, they put their camera down for 2 seconds. It was gone. We never even saw who took it or how it was taken or whatever. And so we went to report it at the police station. And because I had nothing to do and I was hanging out with them, I went with them. It was fun.
Number 6.
So my number 6 is Barcelona. So this is amazing. I love when this happens because I can segue perfectly right into my list. And I'm going to tell you in a second all the great things about Barcelona, but I also have a note saying it is notoriously known for pickpockets. Like Barcelona is of all the cities I've been to, it's every time I've gone for work, I've been to Barcelona for work so many times I kind of lost count. Every time one of my coworkers, something's missing. One of my friends got their phone stolen, another girl got her purse stolen. Like every time there's someone, like it's notorious for those pickpockets. So you really, really have to watch your stuff. If anybody's planning to go to Barcelona, you gotta always be aware of your surroundings. But
just don't take anything with you. That way you can't lose anything.
Exactly. It's really like a party city, like the nights, when you go for dinner, you only go after 9, even 10, and then the night starts late. It's that type of thing. And I mean, it's just such a gorgeous city to walk around. The buildings, the architecture. There's a beach right in the city, beautiful beach. And I love the food. Like I love the whole tapas style of food. It's just I just love it. So every time I go, it's quite a thrill. I mean, like I said, I've been to Barcelona so many times for work, but I love going there every time.
They also have this really good sightseeing tour where you can get on, those buses and they'll take you everywhere and you can get off the bus and walk around and then get back on the bus. And it's actually, it's one of the best sightseeing tours I've ever been on, if not the best.
Well, they have that kind of hop on, hop off bus in many, many cities, but I can imagine in Barcelona, it's probably great,
So number 6 is my Canadian city, and I could have put more than one, but I've chosen Banff because I've been to Banff at least 3 times that I recall. One of those times was during the summer. One of those times was during the winter. It's rare that you can find a city that is fun to go to in 2 different seasons. There's places that are good to go to in the winter. There's other places good to go to in the summer. Banff is one of those rare places it's good to go to any time of the year. And, it's not like, I mean, I guess it could be called a party city because there's a lot of young people there and whatever, but it's similar to what you said about Vancouver. You're in a city, but then you're like in the woods. And because it's so small, you can walk everywhere almost, which is great. So you don't even need a car.
Well, I mean, you don't need a car. Well, the thing is, I didn't put Banff in my list, and I've been there twice, and it's probably the most beautiful the Banff National Park is like probably the most beautiful place on earth. I didn't put it in my list just because the city of Banff is just too small. And like, of course you don't need a car when you're in the city, but you do need a car to go anywhere else that you want to go while you're on that trip,
Of course,
while you're
yes.
visiting that park.
Absolutely.
So I didn't really include that because I just felt it maybe it was too small. But I mean, obviously, if we're talking about like anybody in Canada here planning a trip who has a vacation and who hasn't been to Banff National Park or even Jasper or both, you need to go immediately. Look into that.
Number 5.
What can you say, Josh, about New York City?
Well, you knew this was going to be on the list.
Well, not necessarily, but I there's 2 cities on my list that I'm not sure which one I've been to more, right? There's another city coming up. Like, I've been to New York so many times, right? In the last, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, I've gone to New York at least 3 times a year, for work, sometimes 4. Those trips are usually short, like I'm talking about like a couple day trips, but New York is great. I used to hate going there. I used to think to myself, what is so special about New York? It's filthy. The people are rude. It's so busy and like crowded. And I just did not like it. But the more I've gone, and I told you how often I've gone, the more I got an appreciation for the city. It's really like a city about like neighborhoods. Like, if you just go as a tourist and you just are in Times Square, well, you get bored of that pretty quickly, after one time. But if you explore the city and you walk around different neighborhoods, there's a real good, like, each neighborhood has its own little feeling, its own kind of vibe. It's really quite special, like New York City is really like a giant city made up of like a whole bunch of small little neighborhoods, which is kind of very cool. I mean, it's great because New York, it's like the city that never sleeps. It's 100% true. You can do anything, you can eat anything, you can watch anything, like at any time, whatever you want to do, it's there for you no matter what time it is, what day it is. There's always something, So that's New York.
Okay, so my next city is Boston, and I've been there again 2 or 3 times. I know I've been there at least twice, but maybe a third time that I'm forgetting. The reason I picked Boston is, well, a lot of the reasons for a lot of my cities have to do with baseball. Right. So obviously going to Fenway Park was very exciting. I've been there at least twice that I recall. But it's one of those old cities that you can walk around, and I didn't go on one of those sightseeing tours, but I did go on a shorter walking tour, which was pretty cool. And there's so much to do in Boston. Like, I wasn't even there long enough to do everything that I would have wanted to do. And I would go back if I had the chance. And I mean, I hopefully will one day, but it's just a fun place to be.
Yeah. Boston's a cool city. I always felt that it was very sort of comparable to Montreal in that it's a city that's very old. It's historical. It has a kind of a lot of the same feeling when you're there. The impossibility to park, the traffic as well. But that's a whole other story.
The cobblestones. Yeah,
there's a lot of history in that city. It's not just a brand new city that's been built up, in the last, let's say, 100 years. It goes back way, way before.
Yeah, it has. I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but it's not like Anytown, USA.
What is this?
Anytown, USA. Hello? Is Kramer home? Oh, hey.
Hello, neighbor.
Boy, those azaleas are really coming in nicely.
Oh, you gotta mulch. You've got to.
You barbecuing tonight?
Yeah, right after the fireworks.
Number 4.
My number 4 is definitely not Anytown, USA. We're going to Europe, and it's Paris. So, I've been there several times. I'm lucky enough that I got to go there for work. I think at least 3 times, maybe more. The thing about Paris is that when you go there, it's actually like you feel like you're in like a kind of postcard.
Yeah.
All the all like the things you see on TV about Paris or on movies or in print or like or things that you read, like whatever you have in your head of like what Paris is actually supposed to look like, that's actually what it looks like. Like it's this super majestic city with these unbelievable buildings. You just walk around, you're like, where the hell am I? You got all this history around you, and like again, like sort of like the stereotype of like just sitting like at a cafe outside. Like you see that in every movie and TV show set in Paris, because that's how it is. That's actually how it is. You can just go and sit down, have a coffee, have a drink, and like you could just sit there for hours and just watch people walk by, and it's amazing. So I mean, everybody thinks like the Eiffel Tower is like this big landmark, which of course it is. It's huge. It's way bigger than you think. Like it's way bigger than you think when you're standing next to it. But Paris has all these other amazing buildings everywhere. There's just lots of history around you. And of course, being able to speak French is a huge advantage for me and you. Like I've always felt like it was easy to go there. You can go to some cities in Europe and, there's a language barrier, but Paris is like, for us, it's like, it's kind of that's an added bonus.
Yeah, I do recall when I was there, and being able to speak the language certainly is a huge benefit. By the way, you mentioned the Eiffel Tower. It just opened yesterday for the first time in almost a year, I think.
I know, I saw that on the news. I was happy for the people that live there. Well, like I have friends too. Of course, I have friends and colleagues there, so I was happy for them that their city is starting to open.
Okay, so next on my list is another city where there's a lot of stuff you can do, and that's Chicago. I've been there a few times. They have 2 Major League Baseball teams. I've seen games at both those stadiums. I've also been with you to see a Paul McCartney concert in Chicago. Of course, there's lots of good places to eat in Chicago. It's also one of those older cities where there's, a lengthy history. And I didn't do one of those sightseeing tours, but I'm sure if I did, it would be a good tour to do. I happen to know someone that lives in Chicago as well. Although really it's the outskirts, so it's not technically Chicago. But just there again, I didn't even spend enough time there because there's so much to do that I could easily go back and fill in all the blanks that I missed. But a lot of fun things to do there, and it's not the city that never sleeps, but you can do anything you want there pretty much anytime you want.
So I'm gonna get to Chicago in a second. I'm gonna add to what you said. It's coming up on my list, so let's just leave it at that.
Number 3.
So I'm staying in Europe with number 3. I just did Paris. Now we're going to go to Rome. I've only been there a couple times. It's not a place that I've been to a lot. Maybe that's why I liked it so much, because it seems so new and different, especially the last time I went. Just like I said about Paris, like Rome is just like, it's full of history. And when I mean history, we're talking about ancient history, not like Paris that has these buildings from, the last 100 or 200 years. The history in Rome goes back, way before that. There's no other city in the world where you can just walk and then all of a sudden there's like the Colosseum in front of you, right? Like that's pretty spectacular. So you just have this great feeling about history everywhere and incredible landmarks, all over the place. But like, I mean, if you like Italian food, like you'll have like, you can just go in like any little restaurant that just looks like nothing and you're going to have the greatest food you ever had. Like it's everywhere. Like it's everywhere. So, just incredible. Just the food. It was like the food tour. It was just incredible when I went there. The amount of great Italian food we ate. And I asked myself the questions like, what do Italian people do when they want to eat like a burger or sushi? It doesn't seem like there's a lot of options.
Yes, it's a dangerous place to go if you're watching your weight.
Yeah.
Okay, so next city on my list is a city that you've mentioned. It's New York. And I mean, you've said almost everything there is to say. They also have 2 different baseball teams. There's so much stuff to do there. There's Broadway. There's the US Open tennis, if you like that. I mean, I'm not going to list off all the events that happen in New York. There's the New York Marathon. And this is really actually the city that never sleeps. And like you said, there's different pockets of New York, different boroughs, and each one has its own sort of flavor. So if you are going to go there, you do need multiple trips in order to be able to see everything because there's too much to do in one trip. It's great also because for us, I mean, you could just get in a car and go. Not now, maybe, but eventually you can get in a car and go. You don't need to fly down there, and you could go just for the weekend. It's it's better if you're there longer, but you could just go for the weekend. I've been there to see baseball games. I went to see Late Show with David Letterman on several occasions. I don't even remember all the stuff that I've done in New York. Of course, all the big concerts happen in New York, so if they're not coming to your city, you can definitely go to New York and see them there. So it's just a fun, busy place to be.
It's busy. One thing, the first times I went to New York, I was like, the sirens go on all night. So like when you're sleeping in a hotel, it's like, oh my God, what's going on? How come there's all these sirens going on? And then finally, when you do get to sleep at like, no matter really early, there's noise on the street, right? If you're staying in a hotel in the city, there's always noise on the street early, So, like I said, it took me a while to get an appreciation for New York, but I definitely have that appreciation now.
Number 2.
Number 2 for me, I think it might be coming up on your list, Josh. I'm not 100% sure. And that is San Diego, California. Beautiful little surf town in Southern California.
Because our listeners don't know how much you surf.
Yeah. I mean, I've only been there a few times, not that often, but whenever I've gone, it's always been an awesome trip, and it's always awesome weather. And that's not just by accident, because there's always awesome weather in San Diego, no matter when you go. Right? I mean, the cool thing about San Diego is it's a small town. It's not really big. It's just fun. And it has a real, like when I say surf town, it's because it has a real like surfer vibe. Like the people who live there are like so relaxed. It's like you wonder if they have a pulse, It's almost like they took this little surfer community and made it into a big city. That's the people who live there. The first time I went, the airport, as you know, Josh, it's not very far from the city. It's fairly close. And when you drive in, you sort of pass the ocean and the palm trees are there. And like the first time I went, it was like freezing cold in Montreal. I land in San Diego. I'm in a taxi to my hotel and I'm like, what the hell is this place? Like, how come I've never been here before? Like, what is going on here? Like, it just blew my mind, like how beautiful the city is, and especially the weather, like just the climate. It's just really spectacular, San Diego.
Nice. Well, the next city on my list is also in California. It's San Francisco. So San Francisco
nice.
is also not a huge city, which is one of the things I like about it, because you can pretty much get anywhere you need to get to in a relatively short amount of time. There is traffic, but still. San Francisco also has great places to eat and so much to do, like so many good touristy things. It's an expensive city, that's for sure. So you can't stay there very long. I don't understand how anyone is able to live in San Francisco because, rent and housing is crazy expensive. So yeah, I've been to see a baseball game in San Francisco. It's a great new stadium they have. I mean, new. Relatively new, but the thing is they made it look like one of those old ballparks, which is what's great about it. And it's right on the water. So yeah, again, just a lot of fun stuff to do. You probably need a week to do everything. So I highly recommend going to visit San Francisco.
That's a good one. I hadn't been there enough times, to be perfectly honest. And then the problem with me and San Francisco is when I have been there, I've had no time to be a tourist. I was there for work, and just from circumstances, I just didn't have a chance to really see enough of the city. But it's definitely a place that I would love to go back to and explore more.
Number 1.
So I'm at number 1, Josh.
Number 1.
Number 1's a city that was in your list. It's the city that, other than New York, I'm fairly sure I've been there the most times. I've been to Chicago so many times, like over the years. I lost track. I love Chicago. I always tell my wife, like, send me to Chicago. If I have to go to Chicago for work, no problem. I never get sick of going there. I love going there every single time I go. It's it's like New York in terms of size, but it's Midwest in terms of people. So so you don't have like this, the stereotypical like rude New Yorkers. Well, you don't have that. You have the polite Midwesterners, right? So that's part of like what makes Chicago great. And it's just, I mean, look, obviously there's some really bad parts of Chicago that I've never seen, right? but if you're in the downtown Chicago, in the touristy-ish parts, like you can just walk around for an entire day. It's a perfect city to just walk in. And like you said before, great sports town. I've seen games there in multiple stadiums, and great food. I mean, oh God, I could list you all the restaurants I've been to in Chicago. I've had some great experiences and just love going there. And I can't wait to go back.
Very nice. So my favorite city is something that you mentioned in your list, and it is San Diego. I've only been to
I knew it.
I've only been to San Diego once, and funny enough, you mentioned that, I've been to the airport. Actually, I haven't been to the airport because when I went to San Diego, I didn't fly into San Diego. It was part of a bigger trip, and I was coming from somewhere else, and we drove to San Diego. So I haven't been to that airport, so I don't know anything about it. But like you said, the weather there is perfect 365 days a year. So there are people who prefer to have different seasons, and they like winter and they like fall and they like spring. I'm not that person. I like the weather in San Diego. And if that was the weather every single day of the year, I would be thrilled with that. I don't need 4 different seasons. I don't need cold. And, there's lots to do there. So there's the San Diego Zoo and there's SeaWorld, and, those are touristy things. I didn't get to spend enough time there. I would love to go back. I would love to actually just move to San Diego and never leave. It's just because of the weather. If you can wear shorts and a t-shirt every day of the year, that works for me. I haven't been there in the winter, but anytime you're watching any sporting event that's taking place in San Diego, even if it's happening in like December, January, February, it still looks beautiful.
The last time I was there, it was in December. One of my coworkers is a local, like he lives in San Diego, right? So we're there and everything, and the weather's beautiful, even though it's December. And he's like, we're having a heat wave.
That's hilarious.
I was like, excuse me? What are you talking about? Yeah. So it was pretty funny because to me it was just perfect, So
nice.
All right, so those are our top cities. So I'm gonna try to get to those cities again in the next year or two. I'm gonna try to go to as many as I can.
Me too. It's gonna take me more than a year to go to all those cities.
And I travel a lot for work, right? So I always tell you where I'm going, right? I'm like, hey, I'm going here, whatever. And then you always tell me, and you do the research for me sometimes. You're like, hey, you're going to New York. You can go to the Rangers are home, or it doesn't matter what city. You're like, you should catch a game. You should go to an NBA game. You should go to this. Or even if I'm in Europe, you should go to a soccer game, whatever. So I never do, right?
I know.
I never do that. Most of the time is because I'm just too busy with work. But that's a poor excuse because my coworkers do stuff, right? And like I just don't feel like it sometimes. I'm like, oh, I gotta figure out the tickets. You know me. I'm like, I don't want to worry about the details. So I actually told my son during the pandemic that when I'm back to traveling, my resolution is I'm gonna go to these games whenever possible.
Good.
The Skip and Josh podcast is available wherever you listen to podcasts. If you listen to the show through Apple Podcasts, please leave a review. To interact with the show, send an email to skipandjoshshow@gmail.com. Follow the show on Twitter and go to Facebook to like the show page. And now for some final thoughts from the guys.
We haven't done the our final thoughts segment in a while. Do you have any final thoughts to end the show with? I have a couple of pretty good ones.
So I have to tell you something I heard on the radio the other day. So keep in mind, I live in Toronto, and so I listen to Toronto radio stations. And I don't listen to sports radio. I listen to music stations. So they don't really know. I mean, they know about sports, but they don't know enough about sports. And yet they talk about sports all the time. So the day after everyone here is still bitter that Montreal beat Toronto in the first round. So the day after Montreal got eliminated by Tampa, the morning show, they were talking about like, how do you feel now that the Montreal Canadiens lost? Are you happy? Are you sad? Whatever. So all these people were calling in, and most of them were Leafs fans, and they were happy that Montreal lost. So one guy called in, and he started to play along with them, pretending that he didn't like the Montreal Canadiens. And then he said, "Have you been to the Montreal Embassy in Toronto?" And I'm thinking, there's a Montreal Embassy in Toronto? And so the caller's like, "Yeah, it's called the Hockey Hall of Fame."
That's a classic. That's a classic.
It was very
I'm on
classic.
social media a lot, Josh, as you know, and it's pretty telling and also disturbing how the Montreal Canadiens are just still in the heads of the Leafs fans. They're taking pleasure in the fact that they lost. It's really unbelievable. Like, worry about your own team, Worry about your own team. You're about to have 1 million free agents. The Leafs are going to look completely different next year. They're going to have a whole bunch of new players. You haven't won a playoff round in 17 years. You haven't won the Stanley Cup in 54 years. You have your own stuff to worry about,
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Wow, I have a few good ones, Josh. But I'll start by telling you haven't asked me this question, and I was waiting for it, which is the song of the summer.
Oh, it's funny that you mentioned that because I was thinking about it, but I didn't know. I still am not clear on this. Is it something that you wait until the summer's over and then you select it, or you have to do this at the beginning of the summer, what you think is going to be the song of the summer?
No, it sort of happens like organically as the summer goes, and then you figure out what is the song,
The funny thing is, before you tell me what it is, this is the first time that your song of the summer might actually be a song that A, I know, and B, I like.
I'm not sure, but we're about to find out. So it's different this year because, I don't listen to top 40 radio. I don't, right? The only time I would listen to it is, if I'm in the car and with my wife, and then she puts on, that's what she listens to. Or my daughter actually listens to that music too. But we have satellite radio now. So I just listen to 80s on 8 or whatever, I'm listening to my music, and so I don't actually, even when my wife's in the car, so I don't have access to this. But I asked Selena, my daughter, yesterday about what she thinks about the song of the summer, and we kind of agreed on one, and that's Olivia Rodrigo, and the song is called Good For You, with the number 4, by the way, not F-O-R.
So I had a feeling that was the artist you were going to pick. I thought you were going to pick the song called Brutal.
Yeah, well, Brutal is the first song on the album, and it's a great song, and it's a song that's right up your alley because it sounds like 90s alt rock. It sounds like a combination of Cannonball, you know that song?
Yes, it sounds like Veruca Salt.
Veruca Salt, Seether.
Correct.
Right? It's a combination of Seether, Cannonball, and the song, I forget the name of the song, by Luscious Jackson. It's a combination of all those three.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the rest of the album's not like that. It's a little more pop, but not too much. And I think the song Good For You is the number 1 song on top 40 right now. So good for Olivia Rodrigo. And I really do feel like that's the song of the summer. And the album is coming from a 50-year-old old dude. I listened to the album often this week, and it's really tremendous. I'm proud of myself that an old guy like me could still appreciate the music of a teenage, pop star.
Great.
So now the question I have for you: what's our topic for next week?
Okay, so I've had a lot of time to think about this, and I have a great topic. At least I think it's a great topic.
You told me you were ready. You told me you were ready, right? Yeah.
I think it's a great topic. So, all of our lists, except for one, all of our lists have been favorite fill in the blank. There was one that was our least favorite, and that was the stats. And actually, that topic, I think, was my favorite topic because I kept thinking of other stats that I hated. And also,
well, the bad stats talking points we've talked about them over and over every episode. There's always new bad stats emerging, right?
Right. Yeah. And that episode, it was like the best of both worlds because it enabled me to list things that were bugging me, like stats that are bugging me. So I got to get a lot off my chest that episode. So
Right.
So, in that vein, my list is not favorite fill in the blank. My list is least favorite fill in the blank. Now, the only problem with this list is I don't know what to call it. So I'm going to try to describe it to you, and I don't know if we're able to give it a name. So this is what I've come up with. Most annoying / hated / dirtiest hockey players.
Okay, so it's not the worst. So like I understand it's not the worst or least favorite, but it's maybe
Well, it could be your least favorite.
It could be your least favorite, but it's also the most dirty. So it's still like the best, the most of something.
Fair enough. Yes.
Yeah. So basically your least favorite hockey player in terms of for whatever reason you hate them.
Yes.
Does it have to be hockey or we're talking about any sport?
Hockey.
Hockey. Well, that's a tough one.
No, it's not just current. Like this could go back as long as you want, many years.
It's a tough one because, I mean, obviously you probably have your number one in mind. That's why you thought about this list.
Right.
But for me, I don't have a player that instantly comes to mind.
I'm sure that will change quickly when you think about it.
No. As soon as I start to think about it, I mean, all I have to do is look at any Boston Bruins roster of the last 20 years, and I'm sure I can get some ideas.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and then, of course, we have a new contender, Nikita Kucherov. He jumped right to the top pretty quickly.
I didn't even consider that when I thought of this list. It was well before that even happened.
It was, but think about it. He just he actually insulted me.
And me.
Shirtless, drunk in a Stanley Cup press conference, he insulted me. Being a Montreal Canadiens fan, he insulted the whole fan base, telling us like that we shouldn't be celebrating. So that's a good one. I'm going to have a lot of research to do for that, for sure. That's going to be great. Okay, have a great rest of the weekend, and I'll talk to you next time.
All right, you too. Thanks.